Today I have Lindsay Williams, formerly known as Lindsay Doe, in my interview. She is from England and she's language tutor for French and Spanish. She blogs and vlogs about language learning on Lindsay Does Language. I'm so glad to have you here today.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
So you learned quite a few languages. Besides English, French, and Spanish, which one would you consider yourself fluent by any definition that you have for fluency?
Definition for fluency. Now that's a question. I don't need your definition of fluency. Just by your definition of fluency, which languages would you say you're fluent in? So I prefer to say like the languages that I've studied, and then kind of give them. I'll give them to you in order of like how well I sort of studied them to a particular point. So yeah, English is my native language, and then French and Spanish are kind of up there, and then kind of beyond that probably German, Portuguese, and Italian, roughly around the same level. Right. And then I studied a tiny bit of Dutch and Mandarin Chinese. They're roughly kind of the same level, and Japanese as well. It's probably about there. And Korean a little bit, and Esperanto a little bit, and now currently I'm studying Indonesian, which is really exciting.
All right, and so you learn a language, and then when do you stop? Like, you don't feel like it anymore, or what makes you decide to, I don't want to get to full fluency, but I'm going to start a new language or something like that?
Well, it varies. I mean, something like Spanish, for example. French was the first language the first foreign language I studied, and I started that when I was about 7 or 8. So we're talking like 20 years ago, nearly, which is crazy to think. But to say I've studied French for 20 years would be wrong, because I haven't. So there's that idea of how long do you say, oh, I'm going to study a language for a year or for 6 months, 3 months, a month, whatever, and then judge how far you get. Is quite difficult. So it varies. I mean, it's been a case of German, for example. I studied for 1 year initially, a 1 year course, because it was a kind of a set course. And then I decided to do the second course because that meant I would get the certificate. So I was like, okay, so now I'm going to do it for 2 years. And then I figured, well, it's 2 years. I've got to like a comfortable level that I can like revive it when I need to, but I don't necessarily want to go further with that language. So I'll leave that one there and I'll move on. Whereas other languages like Korean, for example, last year, I studied for probably 3 or 4 months, and I just didn't get as far, and I wasn't enjoying it as much. So I thought, you know what? I want to enjoy this, so maybe I'll leave this for now and come back to it in the future. So it's a very personal thing in terms of the language, in terms of it depending on each language, being its own sort of individual process, and depending on what else is going on as well in your life in general at that time. So yeah, it varies.
So you said the course finished, you didn't feel like you wanted to continue, but like, what was your ultimate goal with a language that you learned? Like, if you didn't get to, say, fluency, did you just learn it for the fun of it, or did you plan to use it at some point? Like, what was the goal with language that you kind of stopped earlier?
I think perhaps this is where I'm maybe a little bit different from most people, in that I think it feels like for most people the idea is they want to communicate, they want to speak with people. Whereas for me, I'm sorry, recovering from illness, so that's why I am. I'm kind of a little bit more introverted in that sense. So even in English, I don't just go out to whatever and go, hey, hi, my name's Lindsay, how are you? So for me, speaking was never a big thing. It was never a case of like, I want to go and talk to the people and meet people. So it's always been more about just, I enjoy that process of learning a language, and I enjoy kind of the routine of it as well. And I enjoy with languages, it's about, for me, it's about kind of learning I think you can learn a lot about a culture and about people and everything through the words that they use and through language and where it's the ways it's evolved, and it just helps me to understand other people and to kind of increase tolerance. And I think that's a really, really nice thing. And that for me, then, that's never been necessarily about going all the way, if you like, to like, because the other thing is, what, like 7,000 languages in the world, and I couldn't possibly just focus on one. Yeah.
All right, so you mentioned fun is very important for you. And I feel like many language learners don't think that they can have fun while learning a language, or they shouldn't have fun while learning a language. How do you make it always fun to actually learn that language?
Well, always fun is hard. There's going to be some things that you don't enjoy, like any process, like any job, anything you do. There's something about it that isn't as fun as the other stuff. But that's good, because that makes you realize what the other, how fun the other stuff is. So that's a good thing. But I think that there's many ways to learn a language. This is what's quite interesting, and what's different about language learning compared to other kind of areas of study. If you learn a language, you could learn anything in that language. So if you want to go really far and kind of think, I'm really curious about music, but I also want to learn Italian, for example. So I'm going to combine the two, and I want to learn about music with Italian kind of twists on that. So you can kind of play with that, and I think that's what makes it fun, is that you can go out there and you can find something that you love in a different language, and really embrace it and really use that to inspire you to keep going. And that's what's going to make it fun, is just having that passion for something, whatever it is, whether it's music, whether it's a film director that you love, or a poet, or you just love the food, or you really love to travel to that place. It could be anything, but having a thing that you love is what's going to help to make it fun, going to keep it fun and inspiring.
So basically the best idea is to think about what's fun for one person, and then try to link it to the language learning process itself.
So yeah,
is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah, like what's fun for you as an individual. Like obviously it varies if you're studying for kind of academic purposes, and you have a particular course to follow, then you'd have a little bit less control over that. But if you're learning on your own, you're in control. You can decide. And if you don't like economics, and you turn your course book to the next page, and there's a whole article you have to read and answer questions about economics in that language, if you want to do it in your own language, don't feel pressured to do it in another. If you're not going to find it fun in your native language, then for what reason would it be fun in a different language?
Of course.
So I think that's really crucial, is to just kind of know yourself and know kind of what keeps you motivated and interested in your native language, and take that and use that as inspiration.
All right. You mentioned another thing, that you're more an introverted person, and many people believe that it's very difficult to learn a language if you're introverted, but there are quite a few polyglots that are introverted. So I think many introverted people, they don't feel comfortable with speaking with other people, especially if they don't speak a language well. You're a language tutor. What would you suggest, or what would you advise to people that are introverted and have challenges speaking to maybe even a language tutor?
Ooh, good question. I think it's about building, and it's not about just going straight in and thinking, well, I have to do it. I have to speak for an hour with a tutor. So here we go, boom. Don't do that if that's gonna freak the life out of you. I think it's about kind of taking steps. So, for example, try starting with putting something out there in writing and sharing some writing with someone. Maybe an app like Hello Talk, where you can kind of connect with people and exchange language. So, you can write a message to begin with, and then you can send a little voice message without video. So you can even read that voice message. So you've already written it in advance. You've practiced. You know that it's correct. So you've taken away that fear. And you're just reading and sending it to someone, and take it step by step. And that's what I'd recommend, is to, rather than just throw yourself in, if you know that's going to be terrifying, ease yourself into it gently and just enjoy the process as well, so that it's not kind of just terrifying. You break it down, even if it's really, really tiny steps, whatever it is for you personally, to get to that point where you need to be able to communicate with a tutor for an hour, as the example that you gave. And I think once you do that as well, you can then begin to kind of refine that process. And that's another reason I love learning multiple languages, is that every time I start a new language, I'm like, right, this is going to be the best one. This is going to be the one that goes to like C2 in 6 months, because, you know, you get better and better at it each time, and you begin to learn about yourself, you know, as a language learner, but also as a person, about, you know, how disciplined you are, and you know, how well you can kind of use your time and all of that stuff, which is really cool, because then that's transferable to other areas of life. But yeah, I think that's what I would say in answer to your question, getting sidetracked slightly. In answer to your question, is to take it step by step and really just don't sweat it, you know. Make it easy but challenging for yourself, but not crazy challenging that you're gonna freak out. And,
don't start learning a language today and have a 1 hour talk tomorrow. Just like go really small steps. I mean, it's great advice.
For some people that would be fine, and the idea of like, oh, I'm gonna start learning, I'm gonna have an hour every day for a week, this very first week, and if that's you, then that's fine, go for it, right? But it may be that that's not you right now, and that's fine too. You can still learn a language, and there's, you know, you can focus on reading and focus on listening and kind of absorbing the language, you know, as much as you want to first, and then when you're ready, you can go and speak. It's your call. It's your call, you know. So that's what I would say is decide how it's going to make you feel comfortable. You know, there's something to be said as well for kind of getting out of your comfort zone, but at the same time, with just jumping out of your comfort zone to the other side of the that's probably not going to do you too much good either, you know, if that's what's going to freak you out. So it's about knowing yourself and taking small steps to get there.
All right, and let's continue those small steps. So now somebody's ready to have a language tutor for an hour, and you're a language tutor. What would be the optimal process to learn a language with a language tutor, for instance?
I think best language tutor you can get is someone who's very adaptable and very flexible to you, because like I said, you know, when you're learning on your own, you're in control. So even if you get a tutor, you don't necessarily need the tutor to kind of lead you every step through that course book. You can be doing that kind of thing on your own, and the tutor then needs to be guiding you in the right direction and testing kind of where you're at and what you've learned. So, you know, if you have sorry, did you want it from the tutor's perspective or the student's perspective?
Give me both. Let's start with the student's perspective.
Okay.
Like, I want to find a tutor, and how should I? Because the tutor can't do all the work for me, right?
Yes. So this is key. The tutor's like a guide. You know, he's going to kind of direct you and give you the information, and what you choose to do with it is up to you. So that's something really important to remember. I think sometimes and this isn't just true for getting a tutor, it's also true if you kind of buy like a language course and you feel like, right, well, I've got that book now on my shelf, so it's going to happen, I'm going to be fluent. But it's not quite that simple, you know. I've booked that lesson, so I just sit there for an hour. It's going to happen, I'm going to be fluent. It's like, no. You know, so I think as a student, understanding that first of all, and accepting that, you know, yes, you've got a tutor and you've booked for an hour. Yes, you've got the course book, but you also need to put in the work. It's down to you at the end of the day. Accepting and understanding that. And second, kind of also accepting and understanding that it's okay to tell your tutor what to do. There's a difference, I think, between a teacher and a tutor. And a teacher is someone who tends to, in a traditional sense, a teacher is someone who would stand at the front of the room and tell you the stuff. You know, that's the kind of what we expect when we think of teacher. Whereas I think a tutor, in more of a personal setting, kind of, you can say to the tutor, I've learned this, and I want to go over this particular grammar point, or I want to talk about this topic today. And you can navigate those lessons yourself. And I think as a student, understanding that and being confident enough to tell your tutor what you want to learn is really key. And that's how you're going to get the most from them as well. From a tutor's point of view, it's about giving that particular student what they need. And so having these kind of your resources and your methods in place and adapting them on an individual sort of one-on-one basis. The example I always give here is I have a student who loves Doctor Who. So from time to time, you know, we're learning Spanish. He's learning Spanish. And from time to time, I'll kind of find a Doctor Who clip in Spanish on YouTube, or find a review of a recent episode in Spanish online or something, and we'll use that as the stimulus for the lesson. Because, you know, even though I have no other students that would care about that, you know, I'll take the time to use that and to kind of pick the grammar points or the vocab from it that we can then kind of build upon in a different setting. So we can use that and begin with that, and then say, right, well, let's just take a look at that sentence again. What does he use there? How does that work? And then go on to explain a grammar point from that, rather than just, right, grammar, let's do this. Test. You know, so I think that's really important to remember as a tutor, is that every student is an individual and needs to be treated that way. And don't be afraid to spend time kind of creating individual resources for students as and when you need, because that's what's going to make them go further as well. It's like we mentioned about making it something that you love, right? Kind of taking advantage of those things you enjoy. The idea also reflects onto the tutor of using, you know, Doctor Who in Spanish, whatever it may be. So I think that's really key.
All right. So you touched already upon the topic of being a good tutor, like looking at it from the student's perspective. That student likes Doctor Who, so I'm going to motivate him to learn Spanish by Doctor Who in Spanish. So what other traits are important for a good tutor? Like, for instance, if I want to choose a tutor, how can I find out whether somebody is a good tutor? What do you think makes a good tutor?
I think what makes a good tutor, I think there's a few things. It's about being patient is crucial, and about being flexible would be the two key words, I think. Patient and flexible. Because we'll kind of go over them one by one. In terms of patience, having someone sat there when you're trying to pronounce a word, for example, going, no, it's this, and you're like, I don't understand, you know, no, let's try it again. You don't want that. You know, also, okay, you're almost there. Maybe just try changing this. Patient, and then kind of giving guidance as you're being patient with stuff is really key. And then in terms of flexibility, like I mentioned, that idea of not just thinking, okay, we need to cover future tense, so here's my future tense worksheet, here we go, there we go, done. You know, being flexible and thinking, well, here's my future tense worksheet, but this person also really loves, stick with the Doctor Who example, how can I incorporate that into teaching them future tense? How can I kind of adapt this for that particular student? So being flexible in that sense, but also in the sense that you may plan and prepare a perfect lesson. You turn up and the student says, I have homework that's due tomorrow. Can you help me quick? Okay, lesson is shelved. Let's focus on your homework. So being flexible in that sense as well. So patient, flexible. I think also being creative is useful, because there are plenty of tutors and teachers who tend to stick, and this is also a difference, you know, if you're in a school setting, you'd have to stick to curriculum generally, whereas when you're a tutor and you're teaching online and it's a sort of one-on-one situation and it is that more flexible, being creative is really key, because there's no reason for you to be like, right, we're on page 62 this week, let's go. Right? So I think that's also really crucial. And if you're looking for a tutor, and if you're trying to decide, is my tutor patient, flexible, and creative? You know, and do they have any other quality that's right for me? I think it's about, I would recommend seeing if they have any other content around online. You know, do they blog? Do they have any videos that you can kind of check out and think, actually, yeah, I like the way this person speaks. I like what they have to say. That can be a really great indicator if a tutor is right for you. Because the thing is, not every tutor will be right for you. It's that idea of if you find someone you know, on Hello Talk, for example, and this person speaks Spanish, brilliant, so now they're going to teach me Spanish. You can't just assume that everyone that speaks Spanish is A, going to be a teacher, and B, going to be willing to teach you Spanish. You know, so it's that, and it also then applies to tutors. So even when you narrow down that group to just people that are tutors specifically, and say, well, you're a Spanish tutor, you'll do. Not necessarily, because, you know, they may not be the Spanish tutor for you. They may not be the right person to teach you. And I think a good tutor as well will be honest in that sense when either you're not you're not kind of a good fit for each other. But also when you're kind of ready to move on. So there might come a point where you think, right, you know what, actually, you don't need me anymore. What you need now is X, Y, Z. And being able to tell a student that is really crucial. Sorry, I'm losing my voice. But yeah, I think that's kind of patience, flexibility, and creativity are 3 key things to look for. And then to spot them, see if they have any content around, see if there's something that you can use as an example to kind of see, yeah, they do look like they have these qualities that I'm looking for in a tutor.
All right. So now I started with a tutor. I started learning Spanish, for instance, with you. And as you said, that's not going to be enough. I'm not going to learn by having a 1 hour lesson with you. What would you tell me now to do for the rest of the week to improve my Spanish?
This is also crucial. Having a tutor who doesn't just say, right, see you later, bye, but is actually encouraging you to go and do something beyond, because you're never gonna be fluent in just that 1 hour per week. Like I said, there's that expectation we sometimes have of, oh well, I've got my hour booked with the tutor, I don't need to do any other work for the week, I'm set, it's all good. No, not necessarily. So a tutor that that recommends things you can do is really good, really, really important. So maybe it's that they have, 10 minutes of the lesson time that they dedicate each week to saying, right, maybe it's even 5 minutes at the start and at the end. So 5 minutes at the start saying, what did you do last week? Did you do everything that we discussed? Did you kind of get any work done every day? How many new words did you learn? Whatever it could be. Then at the end they say, right, next week, what are you going to do? What's your plan of action? So you've got this kind of review and goal setting each time that you meet. That can be really, really beneficial as well. And perhaps with some students, what they might need is almost kind of like a little kick up the bum midweek, to just like an email or a text message or whatever to say, hey, how's it going? Have you done what you said you would do? But again, it's that personal thing of deciding, what's right for this student. Does this student need that in particular? So in terms of what you can do in between, there's so many things.
Some common advice you give.
Yeah, I think what I tend to say is that, coming back to the idea of finding something that you love. So finding something that you can enjoy every day. So it could be that you kind of incorporate the language into your life more. Maybe you find a YouTube channel that or a YouTuber that shares videos in that language. So you say, right, well, when I'm washing up, I'm watching that person's videos. Or you find a podcast and you say, right, when I'm driving to work every morning, I'm going to listen to that podcast. So something really simple that can then be easily incorporated into your life. So it's about creating a habit. And that kind of comes around to the second thing that I would often encourage. So finding something that you enjoy, you don't have to focus on, that can just be integrated to get that extra exposure. And second, making something a habit. Now, it could be that that's the same thing, or it could be something different. So, for example, it could be that you have Memrise, which is a daily habit, so that every day you learn 5 new words on Memrise. It could be that you have Duolingo or Anki or whatever kind of app you choose to use every day. It could be that you're choosing to write 5 sentences every day. We know it can be quite a flexible thing, but having something that can then become a daily habit really easily, sort of like while you're having breakfast, while you're brushing your teeth, while you're, walking the dog, whatever it is, those 2 things. So finding something that is kind of going to increase your passive exposure to the language and that you enjoy, and also finding something that can become a habit. And like I say, it could be the same thing. It could be that there's a crossover there, or it could be that it's kind of two separate things. But both of those, I think, are really important, because I think saying, okay, right, student, we've finished our lesson, so go off for the week, study for 2 hours every day. That's not great advice, because number one, you're not saying what they have to study. Number two, 2 hours every day is a long time, and it's the kind of commitment that maybe you'll do for like a day or 2, and then after that, you miss a day and you feel like a failure. You feel like, I haven't done it today. Maybe I'm not cut out for this. I'll just kind of ignore it and pretend it's not there, and I'm never going to catch up now, so I'll forget it. And that can be quite damaging, because then it feels like a chore, and it feels like a sort of, it's got this kind of negative connotation going on inside, and we don't want that. You want it to be positive. You want it to be enjoyable. So rather than saying study for an hour a day or study for 2 hours a day, I would tend to say make something a daily habit, even if that daily habit is 5 minutes, and then you have like, you know, an hour on Wednesday evenings when you're free, where you do most of your study. As long as you've got something daily that just keeps you kind of ticking over, that can be really beneficial. And I think that's really crucial as well. Just a daily habit, whether it's 5 minutes or 50, it doesn't matter. I think it's important to just get it routine, because it makes you feel good. It makes you feel like, you know, I have learned a little bit of language today. Even if it's just a little bit, it's all good.
All right. So now I think habits are great as well, but I think many people struggle developing those habits. I sometimes struggle myself. So I want to use that app for 10 minutes a day. So I do that I do that tomorrow and the day after, but then I forget. And then maybe like 3 days later, I remember. So how do you actually build habits that stick?
Good question. So I think the idea of starting small is really key. You know, so start with just, let's say it's memorize that you want to make a habit. Start with memorize. Start with just watering one session, right? And so that's going to take you like a minute maximum. And set yourself like a time when this is going to happen every day. So rather than thinking, oh, at some point today, I'm going to find a minute or 2 minutes to just sit on my phone and memorize, rather than thinking it's going to happen at some point, I'm going to find the time, make the time to sit down. And it could be for me, I tend to do memorize when I'm having my tea with breakfast. So I'll eat.
So
and
English.
Well, no, the weird thing is I don't actually drink black tea, like English tea. It's like mint tea or whatever. It's weird. Okay. But yeah, it is. It sounds very English. So I'll have my tea and I'll do my memorize, because then I have a hand free. Whereas when I'm eating, I'm a bit, you know, hands full. So that's the way it's just happened, because that was always a time that I was like available. By that, I'm a slow eater as well. So by that point, my husband's gone and he's gone off getting ready for work. So I'm on my own. So it's not like I'm just being antisocial, you know. So find that time when you're probably on your own. It's probably a useful factor of that, where it's regular as well. And just begin to incorporate it. And like I say, start small. So start with just, okay, I'm going to just do one little session each day. And then maybe after that, it's like, right, now I'm going to set myself, I think on memorize, the smallest goal is like 5 words a day. So I'm going to set myself the goal on memorize to get the streak. And then you've kind of got that to keep you going. And then if you need, you could even go a step further. You can print out like a habit tracker where you can just have on your wall somewhere. So you can see this kind of visual representation. And you can just colour in every day, you know, the box of memorize today. Yes, just a little done. You know, and you can visually see how you're doing. That can be quite motivating for some people to have it actually there, rather than just sort of in our head of like, oh, did I do it today? I think maybe, you know. So yeah, that would be kind of that step beyond, is to actually try having a physical kind of piece of paper on the wall somewhere that you can see. I think, you know, digital is a great, you know, so many apps and stuff you could use to keep track. But I think sometimes just having kind of going a bit old school, if you like, with a piece of paper can be quite useful.
And I also think that if you have all those colored boxes, the more they are, the more motivated you are to not have one not colored in.
Exactly. I mean, like, you know, you see on your memorize or Duolingo, it says, 23 days. And you think, okay, that's good. But you only see that when you go in. So if you don't go in to the app in the first place, you know, you're not going to see your streak. You're not going to actually see that it's there. Whereas if you got it and you see all the colours and you think, there's 23 days, I don't want to miss a day. You know, it's going to be quite helpful to help you keep going. So yeah, it's
true.
Yeah.
And also another thing you mentioned about the tea. So it's basically 2 things at the same time. It's not only you learn at the same time, but you also couple it with another habit, which makes it like a part of your daily routine much quicker than if you only like say it's at 12:30 every day.
This is so true. Yeah, because, you know, at 12:30 every day, let's say you work shifts and one day your lunch isn't at 12:30, And so then all of a sudden it's out of kilter and out of sync, and you feel like, hang on a minute, when am I going to fit this in now? So for me, having it early is also very helpful. Having it early in the day, and like you say, having it coupled with doing something else, so you don't feel like, okay, language time, here we go. It's more a case of, well, I'm going to do my language, but I'm also multitasking because I'm drinking my tea at the same time. That can be very beneficial to keep it going. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. And I want to go to another topic now. You say that blogging is a good way to motivate yourself to learn a language, right?
Absolutely.
And I think that's absolutely true, but it's also a little bit of overkill for many people. I know that many people are not able to actually do that. So what other advice would you have that maybe something that maybe activates the same, I don't know, brain waves, whatever, that isn't as difficult as blogging to motivate oneself for learning a language?
Absolutely. So, the reason that I tend to say, blogging's great for kind of language learning motivation is that before I blogged, I was learning languages primarily for kind of academic purposes, going through school, college and university, etc. And then when I started blogging, I was like, what am I going to write about? Well, I suppose this is a good chance for me to learn another language. So it gave me a reason to do that, and it actually helped because I was like, it's out there in public, even though it was brand new and no one was reading it. It was just the idea of like, well, if someone sees, I need to be learning, and so it helped to keep me going. But yeah, it can be quite kind of sort of time consuming perhaps, and a bit bigger than some people would like. But what I would recommend is kind of taking that down a scale, because what it does is it's really beneficial for your accountability in that sense. Holding yourself accountable is a great way to keep yourself motivated. You've got your habit tracker on the wall, you've got your your blog, shall we say, for the moment online. You're thinking, right, I can see how well I've done. People are reading how well I've done. I need to keep going. So, they kind of go hand in hand in terms of holding you accountable and therefore keeping you motivated. But you can bring it down a scale. And the thing I'd recommend is then going down to social media, perhaps. We all have a Facebook account, I'm sure, if nothing else. And it's really, really easy. I wrote about this, in fact, last week on my blog about using Facebook for language learning. It's really easy to tweak your Facebook and make it into this kind of language machine, if you like. You have the chance to kind of unfollow people, like the people you knew 10 years ago that you actually don't know now. You can unfollow them but stay friends. And then you can fill your feed with relevant stuff from like pages and from groups that are kind of creating content in the language you're learning. You can then enable the ability to write status updates in multiple languages, which can be a really beneficial way to do that. So you can kind of produce language as well as absorb, if you like. So that's really useful. So that's what I'd recommend, is turning then to social media, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever it is. With Instagram, in fact, I actually host something called the Instagram Language Challenge, which is a daily chance to practice a little language. There's 28 prompts each month. So, you've got a few days off because it happens. So you've got a bit of a chance to catch up, except for in February. But the idea is that you can then kind of take the prompt. So let's say that the prompt is red. You don't have to go, right, dictionary, red, this word, and just say it or write it down. You can be as creative as you like. So let's say that you already know the word red because your English is amazing. Do you know what red-handed means? Or do you know what red tape is?
Red-handed.
Yeah,
right. Red-handed.
Yeah. So you can take it and you can think, right, I'm gonna learn an expression or an idiom or a whole phrase, around this word. So you can use the prompts however you wish, and then share a photo or a video and kind of explain in the description. And then what this does, as well as holding you accountable, you're also creating some kind of documentary of your language. You're documenting your language learning process. So you can then go back, like I'm doing this right now with Indonesian. I'm speaking almost every day, except for today because I was ill and I couldn't speak. But I'm speaking, every day. I'll go on and I'll just say something. And then at the end of the month, I'll go back to the beginning and I'll see, actually, I was really bad. I've improved a lot. And so it's a really motivating way to hold yourself accountable and to be documenting your language study too, which is another really crucial thing in my mind.
Yeah, you're able to track your progress,
Exactly.
And you're not like, I didn't progress at all. And then you're able to look at it back, like you said, and then you see, wow, I'm so much better than I used to be.
Yeah.
So that's definitely a great way.
Yeah. Agreed.
All right, let's stick to the realm of motivation. I know that you were quite easy to motivate to learn French with croissants and Spanish with Shakira. Now, that's probably not as most people are not motivated as quickly to learn a certain language. Like, what do you think are other ways to motivate yourself to learn a language you're maybe interested in, but that impulse is missing? Like, you need a stronger impulse to actually learn that language. Like, what do you think are some good ways?
Well, there has to be something, I think, and it varies whether or not you're learning a language for, whether or not you have to learn a language. That could be kind of school, work, like immigration, if you're having to move to a country, for example, or whether or not you want to learn a language. And if you want to learn the language, in theory, the motivation to keep going should be easier. Not necessarily always, but, in theory, that's kind of like, well, I want to do this. So it's there. But then, of course, on the other side of that idea of wanting to learn a language is the idea of kind of dreaming, if you like, about learning a language. That sort of, wouldn't it be cool if I could speak Korean fluently? Oh, that would be fun. That kind of floaty image of it, where actually you want to have the end result. You want to be able to say, oh yeah, I speak Korean fluently, but you actually don't want the process. You don't care about the process. You don't care about the language enough to want that process. So with a want, generally you think, well, that should be easier for motivation, but it's not always. Whereas with the other side of things, where it's a necessity, I think it can be harder. It can be easier if you like the country you're living in, or if you like the language you're having to study, but it can also be harder if you're being forced to, or it is literally a must. You have to do this because you've moved to this country, or we're going to send your job to that country, so you have to learn. It can be harder. And so I think in all of those situations, I guess this comes back to the first point we said about finding something that you love, because there's always going to be something, and you need that kind of charm, that intrigue to keep you going. Maybe, if you're learning English, for example, you're in luck. If you hate the way that I speak, and you hate the TV and the films and the books, whatever that my country produces, you can look over to America, you can look to Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, Ireland, right? You got so much choice. So if you're learning another language, maybe there's not so much choice, then it can be more difficult, but there'll still be something. I'm sure there'll still be something to just hook you and to just get you kind of involved. And then once you found that can act as that motivation. And then also enjoy that process of finding things. So even if, you're listening to loads of K-pop because you really want to be fluent in Korean, but nothing is just grabbing you. Keep going, keep going until you find that thing. Sorry, because chances are it's out there. It's out there.
The hook is very important. A hook is great. That brings you to learning that language. But I know that for some people, that hook is strong, but that commitment or what they think how difficult it will be to learn that language is stronger. So they never start. And I can give you an example. My family is mostly from the Soviet Union, and so we all moved to Germany. Many people of my family moved to Germany and now they still speak Russian. So some of them married German language people or Germans. And so their spouses want to learn Russian, and they have the motivation because there's always birthdays where all people speak Russian, but they think it's so hard that they don't even start. They say, yes, I need to, I want to, and it would be great if I could speak Russian to my spouse, to my children, but it's just too difficult. Like I see how that's their internal thinking. Like it's just too difficult to learn Russian. So what would be your suggestion to learn if the hook is really strong, but the project itself is stronger?
Interesting question. I think sometimes it's almost like, because it's probably going to be a really disappointing answer, but sometimes I feel like it can't be forced. And, you know, learning a language, it won't be for everyone, although I wish it could be. And I think it should be. You know, it won't necessarily be what everyone wants to do. And even if you have that really strong hook, you know, you really love K-pop, you have that connection to Russian in your family, and, you know, you're still feeling like, it's too hard, can't do it, then maybe it's not going to happen, because that's something you have to overcome, I think, before you can get to that point where there will be motivation to learn. Just overcoming that idea of it's too hard, you know. And I think that there's so much that I could say to try and convince someone that learning a language doesn't have to be hard. But if people have already built that up and they're not prepared to knock that belief down, then it's probably not going to happen. It's just the unfortunate truth. But I think it can be knocked down. I think that language learning, if someone says to me, it must be so hard, you know, how have you studied so many languages? I say, well, you're talking to me in a language. You know, we've all learned a language. Even if we learn our native language, you know, kind of in a different way to how you then go on to learn a second, third, fourth, whatever language, you've still done it. You've still gone through that process. This is something that you can do. You know, it's not like you're learning to play a musical instrument and you've never even touched a triangle, let alone a guitar or a saxophone. You know, it's like, this is something that you have done. If you're asking me the question, how do you learn a language? And so I think that that's something I tend to say to people when they say, I don't think it's the answer they want. When they say that, I tend to go, oh well, you've done it, so you can do it again. But I think it's unfortunate. But if some people just feel like, no, it's too hard, I'm never going to do it, then, you know, unless they're really willing to get past that thought and to kind of move past it and then find the motivation and then find the hook of something they love, then it's not going to happen. That's the limiting belief that will stop it, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's true. There is no magic pill. And, all right, so another topic.
Okay.
I know you learned a few scripts, and that's something people struggle with. And like, once you understand how to learn the script, it's quite easy actually, and you can do it really quickly. So say tomorrow I come with a gun to your head and tell you to learn a completely new script within that day. What would you do?
First of all, I'd call the police. Second of all,
you can. You have a gun to your head.
Well, in that case, I think what I would do is, it depends, because they're all so different. Like, there's these common themes of things that I learned. So I think what you're talking about is I 2015 maybe, 2015 was when I did that project where I sort of, you know, just went way into language scripts and dove right in. And what was interesting is I then began to see patterns. So I began to see, for example, a lot of languages from kind of the sort of Indian subcontinent and that region of the world, that it's not A, B, C, D, E, it's kind of K, K, G, G. You know, there's these different patterns of how they work. And then you've got the idea of diacritics. I'm not sure I can't remember which way around. You know, some scripts, I think Arabic and maybe Hebrew are examples where you have the vowels that are then kind of added as markers around the letter.
Or not.
Yeah,
really
exactly. And so there's that element too. And you then begin to see that, this language has those. It's fine. I know what that is now. So I don't know, like, where to begin with that. I'd have to ask him to take the gun down so I could concentrate. But I think for me, what's important with that is having a pen and actually being able to actually write them and just kind of copy in that kind of very repetitive and monotonous style. But for me, I'm quite sort of physical. If I'm just looking at it, You're going, nope, not going to go in my brain. I need to actually be doing it myself. And so it could be, so kind of writing it down a few times, maybe sort of writing it in other ways, like if there's sand in this room where I've got a gun to my head, kind of writing it in sand, or just in the air even, whatever it is, just to try and picture them and hook them up. And also what I've heard some people try with this is to try and picture a shape. I don't know if you've heard of Chinesey.
Yep, I have heard of it. Like mnemonics.
Really cool. Yeah. It's like very visual. It's kind of it's art, really. So I forget the woman's name. I think it's Shanli, I think. And she's created this huge, amazing set of images. So it's like, person, for example, it looks like this. But then she's drawn around the character so you can see, it is a person. And so having that sort of visual clue can be really helpful as well. So maybe think about some of those that you can use to help you remember, like, oh, this one looks like a word that begins with that sound in the language I know already. So, there's a few different ways. In reality, I'd probably just panic and not be able to learn a thing, but yeah.
Well, all right. It was so great. Is there anything you want to add?
I don't think so. I think we're all good. I mean, if you'd like to find out more, if you're watching, feel free to visit lindsaylanguages.com.
Yep, I'll link to it for sure.
That's where you can reach me and get in touch and find out everything, videos and all that stuff.
All right. Well, thank you so much for participating. It was great to have you on.
You're welcome. Thank you.